The planet Arcana was a strange and beautiful world. Its skies were soft green, and its land was filled with rolling plains, rocky ridges, and wide-open valleys. For many years, the alien people who lived there lived in peace. They had simple lives, building their homes near rivers and lakes that once flowed strong. But now the rivers were gone. The lakes had dried to mud. The air was dry and hot, and the wind carried dust that covered the once green valleys. The people of Arcana were afraid. They had never seen such a long drought. The alien tribes gathered in their meeting halls, discussing how to survive. Some believed the rain would return if they waited. Others thought they must leave their homes and travel far to find new water. But leaving was dangerous. The desert stretched for many days, and many of their kind had already perished trying to search for new rivers. The aliens were not weak. They had tools, they had machines, and they had wisdom. But water was not something they knew how to create. They only ever took it from the surface, rivers, lakes, and streams. When these dried, their machines stood useless. Their minds turned to despair. Among them, in one small settlement, there was someone different. A human. His name was Mason. He had come to Arcana as part of a small human group who studied new planets. Humans were explorers, curious about strange skies and distant lands. Most of his group had left when the drought grew worse, returning to orbit where supplies were safe. But Mason had stayed. He said he wanted to learn more about the land and he wanted to help. The aliens did not understand him. To them, humans seemed fragile, reckless, and strange. Why would someone choose to stay in a dying land? But Mason had always been different. He walked the dry plains calmly, carrying simple tools on his back. He did not complain when food grew scarce. He smiled when others frowned. And most of all, he watched the land with sharp eyes as if he could see something that others could not. One evening, when the alien elders gathered in their cracked stone hall, Mason stood outside listening. The air inside was filled with sadness. "Our wells are empty," one elder said. "The reservoirs hold nothing." "Our people are weak," said another. "We cannot walk far in this heat. We must pray for the skies to open." "Prayers will not bring water," said a third. "We must face the truth. The drought may last for years. Our young will not survive." Their voices grew quiet, filled with despair. Mason stepped inside. His skin was dusty from walking, his clothes plain, and his hands calloused from work. "I may have an idea," Mason said in a calm voice. The aliens turned their eyes to him. Some frowned, some looked tired, and some whispered. To them he was only a visitor, a stranger from a faraway world. "What idea?" the eldest one asked slowly. Mason pointed to the floor beneath them. "Water is still here," he said. "It is below us under the ground. You cannot see it, but it is there." The aliens blinked in confusion. "Under the ground?" "We have dug pits. We have searched. There is nothing." Mason shook his head. "Not shallow pits. Deep wells. On Earth, my home, people in deserts survive by digging deep into the earth until they reach the hidden water. My people did this for thousands of years. If we can do it there, we can do it here." The aliens murmured among themselves. Some laughed quietly. Others looked doubtful. One stood and said, "Your ways are strange. We have machines far more advanced than digging with simple tools. If our machines cannot find water, what hope is there?" Mason did not argue. He only smiled. "Machines do not always see what a hand and eye can. Let me try. If I fail, then I am wrong. But if I succeed, your people will live." The elders fell silent. They had little hope left. Finally, one nodded. "Do what you will, human. We will watch." The next morning, Mason carried his tools to the rocky plain just beyond the settlement. His tools were simple: metal rods, a pick, and a hand-powered auger. To the aliens, they looked like toys, old and useless. Their machines could scan the ground and map minerals. But still, they had not found water. Yet Mason began to work with patience. He tapped the ground, studied the cracks in the dry earth, and felt the stones with his hands. He moved slowly like a hunter tracking prey. The aliens followed him, curious, whispering among themselves. "Why does he strike the ground with his hands?" one asked. "Why does he waste time turning stones?" Another said. "Humans are odd," a third replied, but Mason did not stop. He chose a spot where the ground sloped gently toward the valley. He said it was the kind of place where rain long ago would have collected and seeped underground. He began to dig. Days passed. Mason dug with steady effort. The sun was harsh and the dust stung his skin, but he did not complain. The aliens offered him their machines, but he shook his head. Machines are fast, but they may break. Hands are slow, but they do not fail. The aliens watched in silence as the hole grew deeper. Their doubt turned to curiosity. Why would a human work so hard for people not his own? On the 5th day, Mason's auger struck something wet. His eyes lit up. He shouted for the aliens to come close. At first, only mud rose from the hole, thick and dark. The aliens groaned. "It is useless," they said, but Mason kept working. He cleared the mud, dug deeper, and then suddenly water burst upward. Clear, shining water. It spilled onto the dry ground, soaking the dust, flowing like a gift from the earth itself. The aliens gasped. Some stepped back in shock. Others fell to their knees and touched the water with trembling hands. "It is true," one whispered. "The human made the ground bleed water." The news spread quickly. From every corner of the settlement, aliens came running. They cupped the water in their hands, they drank deeply. They cried tears that mixed with the stream. It was the first clean water they had seen in months. Mason stood beside the well, tired but smiling. "This is only the beginning," he said. "If you want to live, we must build more wells. We must store, filter, and share. This is not magic, it is work, but it will save you." The aliens stared at him with new eyes. For the first time, they did not see a reckless stranger. They saw someone who had brought life from death, someone who had done what none of them could. And deep inside, though they did not yet say it, they began to feel respect for the human who refused to give up. The water that came from the first well gave the aliens new hope, but it also raised many questions. They had never seen such a thing before. For generations, they had lived only from rivers and lakes. None of them had imagined that water could be hidden beneath the ground, waiting to be found. Every day after that, aliens gathered around Mason's well. Some came to drink, others to watch. They were amazed that the hole in the ground gave life where machines had failed. Children laughed and splashed in the puddles. Elders sat quietly, whispering that the human must carry some secret knowledge. But Mason knew this was not enough. One well could not serve all the people of the settlement, and it could not last forever if they wasted it. He had seen on Earth how droughts destroyed villages. He remembered stories of deserts where only the strong survived because they built systems to guard every drop. He knew that if the aliens wanted to live, they would need more than one hole in the ground. They would need discipline. They would need order. They would need to change the way they thought about water. On the second morning after striking water, Mason gathered the alien elders. He stood near the well with a small map he had drawn on old parchment. The map showed valleys, ridges, and lowlands around the settlement. Mason had marked several spots with circles. "These are places where we can build more wells," Mason explained. "Water flows under the earth. It collects in hidden rivers called aquifers. We must find them. One well will not save everyone." The elders leaned over the map. They frowned at the simple lines and circles. Their machines could draw maps with glowing images and numbers, but none of their scans had shown them these secret rivers. They did not know whether to trust Mason's simple sketch. One of them said, "Human, you speak of things we cannot see. How can you be sure? What if you dig and find nothing?" Mason looked at him calmly. "On Earth, my people lived in deserts far harsher than this. They survived by digging, learning from the land, and never giving up. You cannot see what is under the ground, but you can read signs. The slope of the land, the cracks in the rock, the type of soil. These are lessons my people learned long ago. I believe the same lessons can save you here." The elders exchanged uneasy glances. Still, they remembered the first well. If Mason was right once, perhaps he would be right again. At last, one elder nodded. "Very well. Show us." That day, Mason chose another spot. This time near a cluster of tall rocks that seemed to rise like teeth from the earth. He said the rocks had once been shaped by water, and if they had been touched by it before, the water might still be hiding below. The aliens gathered in a circle to watch. Mason began digging again, just as he had before. His hands worked patiently, his auger turned slowly, and sweat rolled down his face. The aliens shifted nervously. They were unused to such slow work. Their machines could tear through stone in hours, but here was a man with nothing but simple tools and stubborn will. "Why does he not use our machines?" one alien whispered. "Perhaps he does not trust them," another replied. "Or perhaps he wishes to prove something," said a third. But Mason was not trying to prove pride. He wanted to teach them that survival was not only about tools. It was about patience, skill, and never giving up. On the 4th day, his auger struck water again. A cry went up among the crowd. Water bubbled, then burst upward in a shining spray. The aliens cheered. Some danced in circles. The elders bowed their heads, humbled once more. 2 wells now fed the settlement. The aliens had more water than they had seen in many months. But Mason did not celebrate wildly. Instead, he stood on a rock and raised his voice. "Listen to me. This water is not endless. If you waste it, it will vanish. You must not drink without thought. You must not let it spill. You must treat every drop as treasure." The aliens grew quiet. They had never thought of water as treasure. For them, it had always been free, flowing, and abundant. But Mason's serious tone told them this was no longer true. Over the next weeks, Mason worked to build a system. He showed them how to carve channels from stone to guide the water into large cisterns. He used simple filters made of sand and gravel to clean it. He taught them how to cover the cisterns to keep dust away, and how to share the water fairly among families. At first, many aliens resisted. Some said, "Why should we measure what we drink? Water has always been free." Others argued, "Why should we trade for it? Why not simply take what we need?" Mason stood firm. Because if everyone takes as much as they want, soon there will be nothing left. Work must be valued and resources must be guarded. Water is life. Life is not free, it is earned. Slowly, the aliens began to understand. They saw that the wells stayed full when they followed his rules. They saw that no one went thirsty when water was shared with care. And for the first time in many months, they saw their children play again, their strength returning. But not all were pleased. Some alien leaders, proud and stubborn, whispered among themselves. They did not like depending on a human. They did not like seeing their people bow their heads to someone from another world. Still, they could not deny the truth. Without Mason, they would have perished. One evening, as the sun sank and painted the sky gold, Mason sat by the well. An elder approached him quietly. "Human," the elder said, "why do you help us? You could have left with your people. You could have stayed safe in orbit. Yet you choose to sweat, to dig, and to teach. Why?" Mason looked at the water rippling in the cistern. He thought of Earth, of deserts where his ancestors had dug with bleeding hands, of villages that rose because a single well was made, of how humans had survived every harsh land they had faced. He thought of how his people always pushed forward, never yielding even when all seemed lost. He smiled. Because this is what humans do. We survive and we help others survive. We never stop trying. That is our way. The elder bowed his head. For the first time, true respect shone in his eyes. "Then perhaps," he said softly, "we will survive because of you." Mason shook his head. "Not because of me. Because you will learn. One day you will build your own wells and you will teach your children how to find water. Then you will never fear drought again." The elder's eyes glistened with quiet hope. That night the aliens slept with fuller stomachs and lighter hearts. They dreamed of rivers that no longer ran dry and of fields that might one day turn green again. And above them, Mason lay awake under the alien stars, planning the next wells, the next systems, and the next lessons, for he knew the struggle was not yet over. The drought would continue. There would be resistance. There would be challenges, but he also knew something else. Humans did not give up. The wells Mason had built were no longer just holes in the ground. They had become the beating heart of the settlement. Every morning, lines of aliens came with jars, clay pots, and carved containers to fill with water. Children laughed as they carried small cups. Elders leaned on staffs, grateful for each sip, but Mason could see a problem forming. The water was free, and because it was free, many aliens wasted it. Some spilled more than they carried. Others filled more than they needed and left the rest to soak into the dirt. Arguments broke out in the lines. A few strong aliens tried to take extra, pushing the weak aside. Mason knew this pattern. He had seen it before in history books about Earth. When a resource was free and rare, greed always followed. And greed led to destruction. So one evening, Mason stood beside the largest well and called the settlement together. His voice was firm but calm. "My friends," he said, "this water has saved us, but we must not waste it. If we are careless, the wells will dry. If we fight among ourselves, we will all lose. We need rules. We need balance," the aliens murmured, uneasy. They were not used to the idea of rules for water. For them, water had always flowed freely from rivers and lakes. "What kind of rules?" one asked. "Why should we limit what we take?" asked another. "We are already suffering. Why add more burdens?" Mason raised his hand for silence. because survival depends on discipline. On Earth, my people learned this lesson. In deserts, families measured every drop. Water was traded, stored, and respected. Without this, whole villages died. I do not want to see that happen here. The crowd grew quiet. Mason continued. From now on, water will not simply be taken, it will be shared with care. Each family will receive what it needs. And if anyone wants more, they must give something in return, work, food, tools, or help. That way, no one will waste what is precious. The aliens looked at one another in surprise. The idea of giving something in return for water sounded strange to them. But some began to nod slowly. They remembered how the first well had been guarded, repaired, and cleaned by Mason's hands. They began to see that work and effort had value. The next day, Mason set up a simple system. He carved small wooden tokens, each one marked with a symbol. Every family received tokens for their daily water share. If they wanted more, they could earn more tokens by helping dig, carry stones, or repair filters. At first, there was confusion. Some aliens grumbled. Why must we give tokens? Why not just drink? But others understood quickly. They saw that the system brought order. No one was pushed aside in line anymore. The strong could not hoard, and the weak were not left thirsty. Soon the system grew into something bigger. Families who had extra food traded it for more tokens. Skilled workers who repaired tools earned extra water for their efforts. Even children began helping by gathering stones for channels, and in return their families earned more shares. The settlement changed. Where once there was chaos, now there was quiet order. Mason had not just given them water, he had given them a way to live with fairness. Weeks passed, and Mason's well became more than just survival. It became a marketplace. Aliens came not only to drink, but also to trade. Jars of grain, baskets of fruit, handmade tools, even woven cloth were exchanged for tokens that could buy extra water. The settlement grew busier, filled with the sounds of bargaining voices. At the center of it all stood Mason, calm and steady. He did not demand riches or power. He only asked that the wells be respected and maintained. He used the tokens not for himself, but to make sure work was done. Digging new wells, building stronger cisterns, and teaching others how to keep the water clean. The aliens began to admire him in a new way. He was not just a foreigner who had saved them. He was a leader, though he never called himself one. He was teaching them lessons that their people had never known. The value of discipline, the strength of fairness, and the power of trade. But not everyone was pleased. In the shadows of the settlement, a few alien leaders gathered. They were elders of proud families, used to giving orders and taking what they wished. For many seasons, their voices had been law, but now the people listened more to the human than to them. This cannot continue, one leader hissed. Our people look to the human for guidance. They trade with him, not us. He makes them follow rules like children, another growled. He treats us as if we do not know how to survive. And the worst part, said a third, they respect him. Their pride was wounded. To them, dependence on a human was shameful. They began to whisper of ways to weaken him, to turn the people against him. Meanwhile, Mason noticed none of this. His days were filled with work. He showed groups of young aliens how to dig properly, how to read the soil and rock. He taught them how to build simple filters using layers of sand, gravel, and cloth. He explained why water must be covered and guarded, not left in the open. The aliens listened eagerly. They began to copy his methods, though clumsily at first. Some managed to dig small wells near their homes. These wells gave less water than Mason's, but even so, the people cheered. For the first time, they were learning how to take control of their own survival. One day, a young alien named Ralik approached Mason. His eyes were bright with determination. Human, Ralik said, I want to learn everything, not just how to dig, but how to make the maps you make, how to read the land the way you do. Will you teach me? Mason smiled. Of course. That is why I stayed. So Mason began training Ralik and a few others more deeply. He showed them how to watch the flight of birds, how to read the color of plants, how to feel the coolness of soil in shaded places, all signs of water beneath the ground. Soon, Ralik and his group became skilled enough to start their own projects. They dug wells in new places, guided by Mason's teaching. When they struck water, cheers rose again and the respect for humans grew even stronger. Still, Mason reminded them, this is not about me. This is about you. You must carry this knowledge forward. You must teach your children. so that when droughts come again, you will never be helpless. The settlement was alive with new energy. Trade flourished, water was steady, and hope returned. But in the dark corners, the jealous leaders were restless. They could not accept that the future of their people was tied to the wisdom of a human. And so, while the marketplace around the well buzzed with life, while the people laughed and traded, a quiet storm of resentment was building. Mason did not yet see it, but the challenge ahead would not come from dry skies or empty ground. It would come from pride, fear, and envy, forces just as dangerous as drought. The settlement around the wells was growing stronger every day. The water system had brought life back to the people. Children ran with energy. Crops began to sprout in small gardens, and trade was alive with the clatter of jars and the voices of bargaining neighbors. For many, Mason had become the center of hope, but in the shadows, pride and jealousy began to stir. Some alien leaders could not accept that a human, a visitor from another world, had become more respected than them. They had ruled their families for generations, giving orders that none dared question. Now people listened more to Mason's calm advice than to their commands. It wounded their pride. One evening, 3 of these leaders gathered in a stone chamber. Their faces were grim, their voices sharp. "This human makes us look weak," one said bitterly. "He gives us rules and our people follow him like children," another growled. "And now," added the third, "they trade through him. He controls the water, and through water he controls everything." They sat in silence, the truth heavy in their hearts. None of them could deny the wells had saved their people, but none could accept being dependent on someone not of their kind. At last one spoke, "We must act. If we do nothing, he will become the true leader here." The others nodded. They began to whisper plans. Meanwhile, Mason worked with the people as if nothing were wrong. He continued training Rollick and the young apprentices, teaching them how to map the land and build simple wells. He helped the families strengthen their cisterns and build shaded shelters to protect water from the sun. Mason noticed that not everyone was happy with his system. Sometimes, strong aliens pushed against the rules, demanding more water without giving tokens. Sometimes families argued when their share ran low. Mason always stepped in calmly, reminding them of fairness, reminding them of survival. But he also noticed something else. Tools went missing more often. A jar was smashed near the well without reason. A rope holding a bucket snapped even though it was new. Mason began to suspect that someone was trying to cause trouble. One night he stayed awake and watched from a distance. In the quiet darkness he saw shadows moving near the main well. 3 figures crouched by the cistern, pouring sand into the filter to clog it. Mason ran forward, his footsteps crunching loudly on the gravel. The saboteurs froze. When they saw it was Mason, they fled into the night, leaving their work unfinished. Mason did not chase them, he only sighed. He knew what this meant. Not everyone wanted the wells to succeed. The next morning, the aliens gathered to find the cistern half ruined. Many were angry, shouting for punishment. Mason raised his hands to calm them. "This is not the end," he said firmly. "The well is not broken. We will repair it. But you must all understand, water is life. If anyone tries to harm the wells, they are harming all of you. You must protect them, not for me, but for yourselves." The aliens nodded, their anger turning to determination. That day, volunteers guarded the wells in shifts. They repaired the filters, cleared the sand, and built stronger walls. The saboteurs had failed, but Mason knew this was only the beginning. The jealous leaders grew bolder. They began whispering lies among the people. "The human is not helping us, he is controlling us," they said. "Without him, we would have found water ourselves," they claimed. "He takes your work, your food, your goods in exchange for what should be free," they spread. Some aliens listened with suspicion. Others defended Mason fiercely, saying he had saved them when all hope was gone. The settlement slowly split into 2 voices, one that praised the human and one that doubted him. Mason saw the tension, but he did not respond with anger. He knew that fighting pride with pride would only make things worse. Instead, he continued his work quietly. He showed the apprentices more techniques. He dug small new wells and he made sure the trade system stayed fair. He trusted that truth would win against lies, but the jealous leaders were not finished. One night, during the hottest week of the season, they gathered their followers and poured waste into one of the smaller wells. When the families came to drink, the water smelled foul and made their stomachs sick. Fear spread quickly. Some cried out that the wells were cursed. Mason inspected the water carefully. He saw the dark slime and knew what had happened. But he did not accuse anyone. Instead, he gathered the people together. "This well is poisoned," Mason said calmly. "Not by nature, but by hands. Someone has done this to hurt us. But listen to me, this is not the end. We will clean it. We will filter it. And we will guard it." The apprentices worked beside him as he showed them how to flush the well, how to rebuild the filters with new layers of sand, charcoal, and cloth. It took 3 days, but in the end, the water ran clear again. The people cheered, hope restored. But their cheers were mixed with suspicion. They began to watch each other with wary eyes, wondering who had tried to harm them. The jealous leaders saw their plan fail, and their anger deepened. But Mason's patience made him stronger. He did not lose control, he did not strike back. Instead, he grew even calmer, even more determined. His quiet strength inspired those who followed him. One day, Ralik asked him, "Why do you not fight them? They spread lies. They poison wells. They try to destroy what you built. Why not stand before the people and accuse them?" Mason looked at the young alien and shook his head. "Because that is not the way. If I accuse them, I make this about me versus them. Then the people will be forced to choose sides and division will grow deeper. But if I continue to build, to repair, and to teach, the truth will become clear on its own. Lies fade when faced with proof." Ralik thought about this. He had never known such patience. He realized it was not weakness but strength, the kind of strength that did not need to shout to be heard. The weeks passed. Mason's system held strong despite the resistance. More wells were dug, more families learned discipline, and more children laughed as they carried water home. But the settlement was uneasy, balanced between hope and doubt. The jealous leaders still whispered, but fewer listened now. Every time they tried to destroy, Mason repaired. Every time they tried to spread fear, he brought calm. The people began to notice the difference. One evening, as the sun set red behind the rocky hills, the people gathered by the largest well. An elder stepped forward, raising his staff. "We have seen truth with our own eyes," the elder said. "When the land gave us nothing, it was the human who found water. When chaos broke out, it was the human who brought order. When poison struck, it was the human who made the water clean again. We cannot deny this. He is not our ruler, but he is our teacher, and for that he has our respect." The crowd murmured in agreement. Many nodded, many cheered. Even those who doubted felt their hearts moved. From the shadows, the jealous leaders watched. Their faces were dark with frustration. They could not defeat him with lies nor with sabotage, and deep inside they feared something greater, that the human was not just saving their people but changing them forever. Mason stood quietly as the people spoke. He did not raise his hands, he did not shout, he did not claim victory. He only looked at the well, the water shimmering in the fading light, and thought, "This is what matters. Not power, not pride, only survival, only life." Months passed, and the settlement around the wells had changed beyond recognition. Where once the land seemed lifeless and the people weak, now there was movement, energy, and hope. Children ran through dusty streets carrying buckets of water. Gardens, small but growing, gave fresh vegetables. Birds returned to the settlement, chirping over the sound of water flowing in the channels Mason had built. Mason walked among the people quietly, observing. He did not need praise or attention. He was content watching families drink safely from the wells, listening to laughter echo across the valleys, and seeing the settlement thrive. But he also knew his work was not finished. The aliens had learned much, but they still needed guidance. They had learned to dig and to filter water, but the knowledge needed to spread to other settlements across the land. The drought was still real, and the planet was still harsh. Mason knew that one settlement alone could not save the entire world. Early one morning, Mason called the apprentices together. Among them were Ralik and several other young aliens who had shown determination, skill, and patience. "Listen," Mason said, his voice calm but serious. "You have learned well. You know how to find water, how to build wells, and how to protect it. But now it is time to go further. Other settlements are still suffering. They need your help. You will teach them what you have learned, just as I taught you." Ralik's eyes widened. "We go alone, to other places? But they do not know us. What if they do not trust us?" Mason smiled. They will trust you if you show them the truth. Water will speak louder than words. Teach them patience, discipline, and care. Teach them to respect life. This is how we survive. The apprentices nodded, excitement and determination shining in their faces. Mason had not only given the people water, he had given them knowledge, courage, and responsibility. Word spread quickly to distant settlements. Messages were carried by travelers who told of a human who had found water where none existed and had taught the aliens to survive. Soon, caravans of aliens came from other valleys, bringing requests for help, supplies, and guidance. Mason welcomed them all. He taught small groups how to read the land, how to dig wells safely, how to filter water, and how to build simple trade systems to ensure fairness. He emphasized cooperation, not dominance. Through these lessons, Mason noticed something remarkable. The aliens were not just surviving, they were growing stronger in ways they had never been before. Their minds became more alert, their hands more skilled, and their hearts more willing to help one another. Mason realized that survival was not just about water, it was about discipline, learning, and trust. However, the proud leaders from the first settlement still lurked on the edges of the thriving community. They had lost influence over the people and had seen their attempts to sabotage the wells fail. But now, rather than continuing with anger, they began to observe silently. They saw the apprentices teaching others. They saw young leaders like Ralik earning respect through skill and fairness. They saw families flourishing, not by force, but by choice. Slowly, the leaders began to understand what Mason had known all along. True strength was not in power or pride, but in knowledge, patience, and service to others. One leader, older than the rest and grayer, approached Mason quietly one afternoon. "You have done something remarkable," he said. "We doubted you, we feared you, but now we see the truth. You have given us life, and more than life, you have given us wisdom. Our pride was blind. We understand now." Mason nodded. "It is not me you thank. It is your people. They worked, they learned, and they chose to follow fairness. Wisdom grows when it is shared, not forced." The elder bowed slightly, his face softened with respect. "Then teach us more, human. Help us carry this knowledge to every corner of Arkina." Mason smiled. "That is why I stayed." Over the next months, Mason and his apprentices traveled across Arkina. Wherever they went, they dug wells, built cisterns, and taught the people how to respect water. Each settlement learned to trade fairly for their resources, to measure what they needed, and to protect the precious life-giving liquid. The human and his alien apprentices became a symbol of hope. They were not rulers, but teachers and guides. The settlements no longer feared the drought. They faced it with knowledge, patience, and courage. And everywhere Mason went, he reminded the people, "This is not magic, this is work. This is understanding, this is life. Respect it, and it will respect you." One day Mason returned to the first settlement. He walked through the streets now full of flowers and plants, past children laughing as they carried water. He stopped at the first well he had dug, now reinforced and polished by the people themselves. He saw Ralik and a few other apprentices teaching children to measure water, showing them how to fill buckets without spilling, and how to care for the filters. Mason felt a quiet pride. The work he had begun had grown beyond him. It had become a legacy. The elders gathered again, and this time there was no fear, no doubt, no jealousy, only respect and gratitude. "You have saved us," one elder said. "You have taught us what it means to survive, and you have shown us the strength of humans. We will never forget." Mason shook his head. "It is not me you will remember. It is the lessons. Teach your children, teach your grandchildren, and one day you will find water even when you think there is none. That is my gift to you." The people smiled, a warmth in their hearts stronger than the heat of the sun. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Mason walked alone to the edge of the settlement. He looked over the valleys and hills of Arkina, where rivers had not run for months, and yet now, through wells, channels, and cisterns, life flowed again. He thought of Earth and its deserts, of villages that had survived through patience and ingenuity, of humans who never gave up. He realized that this was the essence of his people, the determination to survive, the courage to act, and the willingness to help others. On Arkina, that human spirit had taken root. It had brought water, hope, and unity to a struggling alien world, and Mason knew that it would endure long after he was gone. In the quiet of the evening, he smiled. The settlement thrived. The apprentices taught the next generation. The jealous leaders had learned humility, and the people had discovered that survival was not just about strength, but about care, cooperation, and knowledge. Mason took a deep breath of the warm, Arkina air. Somewhere, deep below the ground, water still flowed, and somewhere in the hearts of the aliens the lessons he had shared would flow forever. Humans were strangers to this world, yet their perseverance had given life where despair had ruled. And now the aliens would never forget. The human who built the wells had given them more than water. He had given them the future.